Welcome to our Connektd Sessions, one of many that we will be publishing via our Connektd platform and via our social media channels throughout the remainder of 2020. My name is Ajay Parekh, Exec Producer, Project Director, based in Southsea, Portsmouth, having just returned from a long stint in Asia, and as many of you know, also Director of Connektd. Connektd is a freelance community platform to help communities of agencies and their freelancers. The platform provides a service to all companies and agencies around the world to build unique communities of freelancers in locations where they need them, and for freelancers the opportunity to develop profiles to attract global client base. Given the challenges that our industry is facing now and coming out of COVID-19, we believe that there has never been a more important time in which to realize just how connected and valuable our global network is. Throughout this year, I've had conversations with agencies, suppliers, freelancers, even clients about some of the new line items, some of the new costs attached to delivering events post-COVID, and some of the methodology and working practices that suppliers are having to undertake. Some of these are not always costs. These are overheads that businesses are having to take on board. And in other cases, they are directly impacting line items in their budget as well. So we've invited a number of speakers, business heads from across the UK. I'd like to welcome, first of all, Liz Madden, Director of the NoNonsense Group. Welcome Kevin Tilley, Director of ProStage Europe. Welcome Miriam Siegler, Director of Ways and Means Events. And please welcome Lee Dennison, Head of Business at White Light. Thank you all for doing this session. We have a short amount of time, so let's begin with a few simple questions to help get the conversation going. How has your year been? How have you coped with integrating some of the COVID restrictions into your business?
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least. It's been a learning curve for all of us here at ProStage, from making sure all staff are compliant at work and also on site. It's been difficult but rewarding. From day one, we've implemented on site and also in a workshop all practices which have been advised by the government. So, in terms of coping, we found that we do need more time, especially on site for build and to implement these questions. So. As a company moving forward, it's going to play a big part in the future. Obviously, and it changes from week to week, is COVID restrictions. For instance, if a lectern's being used, okay, a speaker will come on stage, use a lectern, we have to go back on stage again and then spray that lectern down before it's.
Kevin, losing your phone line there a little bit. Maybe Miriam, I could come to you a little bit. I know that you have a slightly different view because not only are you a supplier to the industry, but you're also a producer and agency.
So yes, so we're outsourced operations company. So we have had, I think, what you could call a very quiet year. Ordinarily, we'd do 27 to 30 odd events a year, and this year we've done 3 so far. We came very close to actually running some events we had 2 events due to open, one on the 1st and one on the 2nd of October, which was our supposed restart date. So we've had some sort of experience getting very close to the mark, but not actually running any of our events quite yet. So we have had to look at all the different sort of things that the COVID regulations mean. And like Kevin said, there is definite an element of more time needed. I think more detailed planning, but when we were going through the process, like I say, it wasn't actually put into practice. The micro planning, I think, to a certain extent, helped all our different contractors, because it was, rather than everyone just turn up and we'll build and see how it goes, we could actually stage it. So because we were trying to get one team off before the next team came on. So, trying to pull some positives out of it, it meant that teams weren't going to be stood around for hours on end waiting for someone else to get the lighting up in the air or get the walls up so we could put graphics on. So that's one of the things that I think was going to work quite well, and sort of hopefully something we can take forward in the future, COVID or no COVID.
And what about you, Lee? How has White Light fared this year?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that. That's generally across the board. I think we've the stuff we're obviously going to get into later on into this. I've just sort of taken this piece and what we've done internally at White Light. We sort of obviously go into site and deliveries and crew, etc. We'll sort of come into, and we know how we've had to sort of socially distance on site, but internally we've had quite a lot of change within the building with routes and layouts and one-way systems we put in place. We put a sort of kick door system in so you can open doors with feet. We're trying to really kind of look at starting internally with how we support staff and how we look after and keep safe and secure the people who are in work. We have got people within White Light. Whilst the other teams are remotely working, we've still got obviously teams on site in the warehouse. We've got the office teams, finance, admin support, who are all based within the office. So we've done quite a lot of work for the teams already there, and also doing a lot of work for when we start bringing people back. And again, I say that's route layouts, one-way systems, rebuilt the office space upstairs. More trees have gone in, more plants, more placing to sort of put a bit of sort of nicety into an office. But that's also allowed to put some distance in between desks and things, but also trying to make it feel a bit more of a convivial environment. We've done quite a nice thing as well, where everyone at White Light wears a lanyard, blue lanyard with their ID on it for doors, and any freelancers come in wear a red one, and new starters get green ones, so we can identify green starters. And we they wear those for the first couple of weeks, and that helps us sort of get to know people. But what we've done for post-COVID as we bring teams in is that we have a yellow lanyard, and the yellow lanyard means that I'm okay, but I'm still wary of social distancing. So please maintain distances and probably a little bit more. And it's just trying to giving people that ability to express and to say, look, I'm here, I'm working, but I'm happy to stay away. Other people wearing sort of traditional yellow, blue lanyards go, yeah, fine, I'm here, I'm back working, let's maintain distancing, but let's get on with it. So we're trying to help our staff adapt back into the new way of working, new layouts, new route maps, new ways of doing things, but just trying to keep everyone safe and also make people want to come back to work. We've got a lot of our teams who have been off for months now, absolute months. So bringing them back in is going to be different, and it's going to be hard. So we've done quite a lot of work internally, and I'm sure we'll go on to externally on what it looks like to deliver, post-COVID events between all of us. But that's kind of what we've sort of focused on internally, is how we support our teams who are still working and the teams that are coming back.
What about yourself, Liz?
Well, we're a little bit smaller than White Light. There's just the two of us who actually work full time for the business, and all our crew are freelance. So we've been able to obviously maintain social distancing quite easily, sort of within the warehouse. But our priority has been on sort of looking after our freelance crew, making sure they've got all the information that's been available, whether it was claiming grants or sort of the various help schemes that have been around. So, taking advantage of training opportunities and things like that. So it's been very important for us to make sure that our crew are in a good place. Some have taken on temporary work, and we've also taken the time to sort of review our systems, how we do things, a really thorough stock take. But again, we've been able to do everything very socially distanced. We dealing with large pieces of steel and scaffold. We do have a space, so we've taken advantage of that fully.
Nice to hear that your challenge has been how to protect and retain staff in the interest that you've got good relationships with them going forward as well. That's an important part, not to lose touch with them. It's
hard enough to get good staging crew as it is, so we definitely don't want to lose the one we've got.
Yeah. And are you developing your own training programs, or is this just generally keeping them abreast with?
I mean, it's everything from keeping their plant licenses up to date, rigging. We're continually developing new kits, so there's training on that, and just general well-being, just to make sure that they're in a good place, and that they feel that they are part of the family, even though they are freelance. You know, we are very much a family team, and we do look out for each other, and just that regular contact, you know, and support. I think it's just as important for us as it is for them. So, so that's been really key for us.
And I suppose they look to you as a future employer. They also, freelancers also want to keep in touch with and do their best to honour that relationship as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
A slightly offshoot of a question, but where do you all go to for your COVID regulations, restrictions, information? Because there is a plethora out there other than just Googling stuff. There are, you know, all the associations are busy, every organisation is busy promoting and distributing information, but what are your go-tos, Lee?
I mean, if only we knew, really, wouldn't we? I think, you know, the main train bodies, the plazas, you know, the plaza sort of driving that line between the industry and the DCMS, and obviously the, you know, government websites as well. As much as it's long-winded and written about an industry, I have no idea what they're talking about, because I don't think they understand our industry at all. But we're obviously all following what is perceived as government guidelines, and then the translation of that through the plazas, the vectors, and the unions and down. So I think there's a lot of sources. I'm not sure the main source that we're supposed to be following, the government source, actually understands our industry. Well, we know it doesn't understand our industry, but I think we're all dealing with that in the right way. And you know, let's face it, we're the safest industry in the world anyway. We know what we're doing when it comes to looking after our people and looking after our teams and clients, etc., and managing people on site. So I don't think it's necessarily a hard thing for us to grasp and understand. I think the hard thing is the terminology coming down from government, that's the mistranslation piece of what they define as an event and what we define and what they define as social distancing, etc. So that there's a language barrier, I think, is the main issue. But yeah, fundamentally, it's, you know, it's the government websites, it's DCMS, it's plazas, it's I think we're all getting our information from.
And I suppose in there somewhere is the word guidelines continues to lead everything open to interpretation, which means that it's difficult, I would imagine, for you to communicate to your clients even, or to the agencies, to understand the implications, I suppose.
I think there's a translation issue everywhere in this, and as I say, guidelines is such a cop out when it comes to, you know, what we do and what can be defined, and, you know, how come 100 people can gather in a street in London outside of the pubs, yet we can't organise and have, you know, 30 to 40 delegates in a conference environment. It doesn't make any sense, and we could go around days discussing that. We are where we are, and we just have to get on with it. But I think there's a lot of investigation post this into how the effect of, you know, the language has really hindered our industry.
Yeah. And Miriam, you have an insight into the exhibition world a little bit.
So yeah, so we're involved in the working group, the ESSA and the AEO working groups. We sit across quite a lot of them, and AEO actually lobbied the government to be able to write the guidelines for the exhibition industry. So we and they sort of, to a certain extent, crowdsourced that information to try and make it something that was actually, that you were able to implement, rather than, like you say, some of the guidelines that have been coming down without any understanding of the industry. So the advantage there was we were able to feed into it. I think, like Lee says, we are an exceptionally safe industry in any case, and we are based on risk assessment, and everything we do is, you know, you risk assess before you get on site. When you're on site, you're risk assessing everything that's happening in a dynamic mode. So a lot of what is being asked of us, I don't think is particularly complex. They've tied it up in a huge amount of complex language, but it's the basic guidelines of keep it clean, keep apart, and sort of track and trace and keep all the data, which we do naturally as organisers in any case. So I think as always with these things, there's an awful lot of people who are going to make it to be more complex than it needs to be, to either sort of justify their jobs or come out as a consultant on how to do it properly. But actually, it's all fairly basic stuff that we need to do. Yeah. The problems we're going to have is, like, if some government official comes along and says, oh, well, you misinterpreted the guidelines. But as Lee said, it's a guideline. It's not a legal document that you have to follow. It is best practice advice.
Yeah.
But do you think that, sorry, Ajay, do you think the issue is, though, that we've managed to get our head around it because this is what we do, and we can sort of work through the kind of language barrier and the ifness of it. But God help clients trying to understand that, because they're the ones fundamentally who are paying for this, and they're the ones who are going to organise events. And if they don't understand it and they're scared, then it doesn't matter what we say or do. We're not the ones paying the money out to organise events, and that's the problem. It's not necessarily our world that is misinterpreting or understanding it. It's clients who don't necessarily understand it, or who quite rightly aren't prepared to take the risk.
So again, I think I sit somewhere sort of slightly differently in that we're not exactly the client, but the organisers that we're working with, we're essentially interpreting it for them to allow them to understand it. Yeah. Taking you, like you said, some of the language in there is ridiculous. So if we're boiling it down for our clients so that they can understand it, so they do see what's necessary to pay, to pay for, not pay for, how we can do things for minimal costs. A lot of the signage, for example, we have signage there already, so it's just reorganising that signage so you can get more of this safety things on. So there's lots of things that I think aren't actually as complicated as they need to be, and we see part of our role at the moment as interpreting it for the client so that they can sort of go, right, okay, it's not this big scary behemoth of information that we need to deal with. Actually, what we need to do is widen our hours, put in some sanitizers and get a couple more cleaners on the job.
And then what happened with Southampton Boat Show?
So with Southampton Boat Show, and this is hearsay as far as I'm aware, they had everything in place. Then the rule of 6 came in and they were asked to put in additional measures. So I think the rule of 6 came in on the Wednesday or the Thursday. They were asked to put in additional measures on Thursday night, which they did do, even though the rule of 6 wasn't due to be implemented until the following week. So they put in additional measures. I think it was additional marshals, extra tannoy announcements, various other bits and bobs. And again, like I say, this is hearsay, someone sat in the council office who hadn't actually even been to site, turned around and said, no, we're not going to allow this to open 12 hours before it was due to open. So I don't think that was an issue with the client interpreting or understanding what was going on. They did everything plus, and someone who, like you say, someone middle government doesn't understand what's going on and just decided to axe it straight away without even seeing.
If I may, one other factor in there that I don't know if is fully understood yet, but even over and above all of the mitigating factors that we may put into place, as safe as everything can be, there is still the health factor. And I think that local authorities are still ultimately having to deal with this R number and the health factors that whatever event is taking place, whether it's a marathon, a run, or a boating event, the influx of large numbers of people still seem to worry.
I think also they had all the students descending that weekend as well. So I think there was probably we haven't quite thought this through properly, but it was very much the council axing it rather than the organisers not complying, from what I understand.
But let me ask. This is sort of coming to the crux of the question of this section, which is that of all of the redefining practices that you are putting into place, all of the additional costs that you are incurring in having to meet the needs of your events in the COVID world and post-COVID world, what are those costs? How are you communicating to your agency clients, to your end clients? And are you able to sort of define some of those new line items in your world now? Liz, how is that working for you?
I think for us, there are additional costs that occur, but for us, it's kind of the client that controls those extra costs. Because we work to CDM guidelines anyway, we're quite used to being on our own on site. We do large construction on many of the projects we get involved in, and we have to have a fenced off area. You're not allowed to come in if you're not a part of the approved team, even if you are the client. So we're quite used to sort of working on our own. And actually it's quite nice, no offense, Lee, but when lighting are on your back, wanting to know when they can get access to the structure, it's quite nice that you know that they're not permitted until a certain time. Just the nature of what we do, you know, we build with scaff, most of it's a minimum of 2 meters long, so it kind of keeps the guys apart.
Yeah.
Problems tend to come in when it's tea break, you know, and they all just want to sit right next to each other. Right. But I think for us, it's kind of really reinforcing what most of sort of the supply chain have been saying to clients for years, is proper collaboration between suppliers. They kind of keep us all at a quite, well, I said they, I mean, some clients, you know, we've got some fantastic clients that don't, but quite a lot of clients have this desire to keep their suppliers apart, to not let them communicate between each other, and literally give them a slot in when to work. And actually, by being able to talk to the other suppliers, you can find ways to help each other that actually may counteract some of the additional costs. Yes. When we build, you know, there's always somebody else that will come and put something else on what we've built. You know, whether it's lights, it's sound, it's cladding, it's video walls, I mean, it could be anything. But just by talking to these other suppliers, you know, we can facilitate things for them that might speed up their process. So whilst perhaps their prep process has been more expensive, their time on site could be reduced because we've just made life a little bit easier for them. You know, if it's putting lights in a structure and there are motors, we could put those points in whilst we're building. So we touch one end and they deal with the other. And it just kind of, it kind of means you get a better solution on site without everybody having to be on top of each other. It's almost like a relay race rather than a bit of a mad scramble, you know, for the final 10-meter dash. And I know for us, depending, it's the site side of things that could increase the costs, not necessarily the prep in the warehouse.
Yes.
You know, and in the short term, we've been reducing kit hire and stuff just to try and help events happen. But that's not going to be something we can sustain forever. And I think, you know, it is about collaboration. It is about everybody looking at the big picture and what role they play in it to see if we can come to a good outcome that works for everybody. Because if the client can't afford to do the job, then nobody wins.
We were finding exactly what Liz was saying when we were micro-scheduling the get-in. Like you were saying, sort of someone would be up and say, well, I'm already up in the cherry picker. Do you want me to put the canopy up while you're there? You know, send that to the warehouse beforehand. So like you say, that micro-scheduling, which initially when you look at it is an absolute pain in the arse, can save everyone a huge amount of time. It gets people working a bit cleverer together. You're coming up with some quite creative solutions to problems that we've all had for years, but actually now are sort of being forced into thinking how to work them out.
We have enough time to do the job. We're always rushing to get the job done. So in a good way, this might be a heaven sent, because I think moving forwards in the future, it might be proven that we do need this time, more so because of the restrictions now. But us, and it's really important because this has been raging on for years about not enough time. It's been like this for ages. Clients' budgets are tight; they don't want to spend the money now because of what's happening. They might have to. But yeah, from our point of view, I think the emphasis for us is mainly on people to be more management. They've got to care for themselves a lot more. Man management is very important now. So we've been on site, and people too forget to put the mask on. There's no two ways about it. They'll have a mask on, they'll forget to put it on. So their management skills is really important now. They must have the mask on, but they do forget. It's the same when we're going in. For the instance, for the studio work we've been doing quite a lot of lately, we have the studio to ourselves, which is fantastic. So we'll go in, there'll be no one else there. So we'll go in, we'll build. It's great. We haven't got to move road boxes. We haven't got to ask someone to help us. We go in, we build the job. The next day, the next company come in, and they do their stuff. So that's been really refreshing. It's I must say, because most of the time when we go on site, it's always sometimes a battle to to clear areas, which you understand. I think everyone understands. So, but what the guys said previously, yeah, I think working closer together, where things can be done by another company, for instance, you know, sometimes we can be on site and the fascias might have to be put on, and they say, look, we can leave that to someone else. The others can do that. You don't have to put that on. That's fantastic, you know. Then that's thrilling. But as I say, I think this COVID situation is hopefully, I think, in a perverse sort of way, isn't going to improve things moving forward. Yeah, without a doubt.
Lee, would it be fair to say that there are additional practices being put in place, but a lot of the costs are on your overheads?
Having to take this further back, because I think, you know, we've kind of seen events of the future are going to fall into two parts. And the first part is going to be the pre-production, which is almost a separate piece of work completely. And whether that's pre-production from a project management side, or whether that's pre-production of the actual prep of the equipment, but that's kind of one part, because if we're following government guidelines, we're following prep procedures about how the kit's prepped, number of hours to do that, health hygiene over, you know, sanitizing the equipment. And once that kit's prepped, it's locked down. All of our project management and pre-production administration is done around that piece of equipment, and delivery onto site. Crew are booked, you know, ready to go in those slots. So that's the first part of the work. The second part is obviously the delivery on site. And what I think we're going to have to start looking at and pushing back up the chain through the agencies to the clients is there has to be a separation. There has to be this lockdown and almost project freeze, because we cannot add more equipment, or we cannot change crew, we cannot change deliveries as easily as we could 9 months ago. You know, if we're booking crew that are doing those slots, and we're having to almost put them into, you know, the bubbles we're talking about, booking the slots, and then suddenly client says, look, I need them for 5 hours longer or later, that has a detrimental knock-on effect. Same with, I need another set of lights here, or I need more PA, or I need more video. It's not going to come as quickly as before because of the prep procedure in place, because of hygiene, because of the lockdown. So I think if we part the cost side of it, the whole mentality of delivering events is going to change, with pushing back to the agencies to make decisions earlier, to make the client aware of those timelines and guidance. And we talked about this before. It's not about stifling creativity. It's not about stifling design. It's not about stopping people from, you know, delivering amazing events. It's just saying, look, we need to have more time, you know, and do as much as we can before the event, with the pre-production, with the design, with all that information. Let's get that locked in, so everybody knows what's going to happen. So when we do come to site, and we are working with Liz and Miriam, and, you know, everyone can share, you know, supplies, understand that who's up the tool scope, who's in a picker. We've got 8 locals on site, right? They can all push flight cases in, etc., etc. And that makes far more sense, because, you know, that's sharing the load, sharing the costs associated. But that just comes down to a project management piece, a timeline piece, and managing your assets on site. But, you know, fundamentally, it's going to have to go before then. It's going to have to go with those conversations with the client. There will be additional costs. There does need additional time to do these things, and we are going to have to put project freezes in place. I think we're the only industry that doesn't have project freezes. You look in construction, consulting, anywhere like that, once you've nailed down your consultancy piece or your project, that's it. You know, it's like, well, if you want, it's weird things, you know, if you want a new piece for a certain lift, you have to wait 10 weeks. In the industry, if you say, what do you mean I'm waiting an hour for a new light? We're the only industry that reacts like that, and that's probably to our detriment as well. And I think that's where we have to push back and go, no, look, you're still going to get an amazing project, you're still going to get an amazing product, but we have to freeze out, and we have to lock it down earlier to give everyone that time. If things change, then we have that ability to react to it. We cannot react as we did before. That's not our fault. That's just the state of the world we're in now. And that's the message that I think needs to push through to make the end client aware of that. Because I don't think they always necessarily understand the effect they have from that mentioning to the agency, who mentions the production manager, who mentions then to the lighting team, you know, that knock-on effect of, oh, I wish we could have a slightly different colour light here. Well, suddenly we've got a new rig going out the door.
Yeah.
And I think there's just that whole, this information, we have to be clear in what we're doing. We have to let people be creative, but we have to put that freeze into place that allows us to deliver a safe product.
I think one of the things that I'm hearing out of that is that it's not necessarily a tangible cost in a particular line item, but it's about time. It's about collaborating. To Kevin's point, it's actually allowing individual departments work in their own silos, But to Liz's point, it's actually allowing everybody to collaborate. Technical directors, production managers are having to work harder to join the dots, I suppose. And whilst that may not come across as a specific discipline, I suppose this project management and time is ultimately a factor in the cost of client, I suppose. Venue costs are always an important factor in a client's decision making, which is why you end up with the scenarios in some of those hotels on Park Lane where everybody's in the lift at the same time. I suppose some of those decisions are going to have to be made much earlier.
That's not going to happen, is it? Let's face it.
I was going to say, we're finding that actually, whilst I completely agree with you, Lee, we do need the extra time because of all the extra stuff that's there. We're actually finding that a lot of our clients are pushing their decisions because, well, certainly in the run up to October the 1st, they're like, well, is this actually going to happen? How long can we possibly leave it until we actually have to commit to a cost, until we actually have to? So it's sort of, whilst we're all there clamoring for additional time that we desperately need to make it safe, the clients are so scared of actually committing to anything and putting the money where their mouth is, that we're sort of being squeezed at both ends again.
Yeah. No, well, listen, thank you very, very much. There is so much more to say about the subject. It wasn't necessarily a scary session about overburdening new costs, but certainly the implications that I'm understanding is that on the one hand, there are some positives, collaboration, working together, the ease of working in more restricted environments means that it's safer and everybody should be better for that. But certainly the notion is that there could be a resetting of production and project management on site, allowing a little bit more time to work through the processes, I suppose. But listen, thank you very, very much, Miriam, Lee,
Thank you.
Liz, Kevin. Wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you on site one day very soon.
Event freelancers, welcome to your new community, connecting you to your next project. Get connected. Sign up now. It's free.